thing I'm going to do, sorry, Dante, I should have told you that. So I'm thinking ahead. So welcome everyone. First order of business, I'm going to call roll to validate that we do in fact have a quorum today. Ms. Jarman?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Bellamy? I believe he was not going to be here. Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mr. Perlin?
Here.
Ms. Spalding?
Here.
You, Ms. Fox? She's not with that. I don't believe she's going to be here this evening. So we have, including myself, we have 5 in attendance. We do have a quorum. Thanks for being here. Before we move forward, I will turn it over to Mr. Garth for determination of necessity of today's meeting via this medium. Mr. Garth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This meeting is permitted to be held in an electronic format under the Governor's Executive Order 16 as continued in its current iteration under Executive Order 78, so long as the board determines that the business conducted by the board is essential business. As such, I would recommend that a motion be made that the business before the board is essential business, that the board chooses to meet in an electronic format, and that all board rules or regulations to the contrary be waived.
Very well. To the board, a motion as requested by Mr. Garth.
So moved, Will Conway.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, as I call your name, I'll obtain your vote on the motion. Ms. Jarman?
Yay.
Mr. Conway?
Yay.
Mr. Perlin?
Yay.
Ms. Spalding?
Yay.
I have 4 yays, no nays. Motion passes. Thanks again, Mr. Garth. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Entertain a motion to do so.
So moved, Joe Perlin.
Second, Will Conway.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. Any comments, questions, or edits? Hearing none, I'll call your name for a vote on the motion to accept the minutes. Ms. Jarman?
Yay.
Mr. Conway?
Yay.
Mr. Perlin?
Yay.
Ms. Spalding?
Yay.
4 yays, no nays. Motion passes and minutes are approved. Next, I'm going to read a memo regarding appeals. If you're not satisfied with the decision of the Metropolitan Beer Permit Board regarding your application or your hearing, you may appeal the decision to the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court pursuant to the requirements set forth in TCA 57-5-108. The decisions of the Metropolitan Beer Permit Board take effect on a date to be determined by the board. However, you may file an appeal within 60 days of the date of entry of the board's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. The following applications appear to be in order to be approved based on staff recommendations. Number 1, Barrique Brewing and Blending, LLC, Barrique Brewing and Blending. 2, Southern Grist Brewing Company, LLC, Southern Grist Brewing Company. Number 3, Rose Pepper Cantina, LLC, Rose Pepper Cantina. 4, Grams, LLC, Grams. 5, JKO Enterprises, Inc., Natchez Hills at the Hermitage. Number 6, 7-Eleven, Inc., 7-Eleven, number 41084H as in Halo. 7, HH Heritage Inn of Nashville, LLC, Hyatt House, Nashville Airport. Number 8, Hattie B's of Middle Tennessee, LLC, Hattie's 5th and Broad. 9, ESQ Germantown, LLC, Emmy Squared. 10, Tennessee Taproom, LLC, Tennessee Brew Works, Crawfish Boil. That's a special event. Number 11, Alive Hospice, Alive and the Bluebird. That's a special event. Number 12, 7-Eleven, Inc., 7-Eleven, number 41070H as in Halo. 13, Bearded Iris Brewing Company, LLC, Bearded Iris Brewing. That's an on-off sale. Number 14, Bearded Iris Brewing Company LLC, Bearded Iris Brewing, that's a manufacturer. 15, Taco Shayla LLC, Taco Shayla. And number 16, Nashville Zoo Spring Flamingo. That's a special event. I'll entertain a motion to grant those permits.
So moved, Joe Perlin.
Second, Will Conway.
A motion and a second to grant. Any discussion? As I call your name, I'll entertain your vote on the motion to grant. Ms. Jarman,
Yay.
Mr. Conway,
Yay.
Mr. Perlin,
Yay.
Ms. Spalding.
Yay.
Thank you. 4 yeas, no nays. Motion passes. Those are granted. The Beer Board staff will most likely email those permits out to the new permit holders, where the new permit holder shall legally and by rule display those in a public place within their establishment. The following applications based on staff recommendation shall be deferred indefinitely. Understand if you are on the call listening in that if you are one of these, the staff does have the authority to issue temporary permits once all the necessary documents have been submitted. So number 17, In Soang LLC, Bite a Bit Thai Sushi. 18, Sir Pizza Rivergate Inc., Sir Pizza Rivergate. Number 19, Sir Pizza Rivergate Inc., Sir Pizza Rivergate. For clarification, number 18 was an on-sale permit. Application number 19 was a delivery curbside. Number 20, Soho Lounge LLC, Soho Lounge Madison. 21, Forage Forward Inc., Forage Forward. 22, Smokehouse Market Inc., Smokehouse Market. 23, Sunda Nashville LLC, Sunda New Asian. 24, Dara LLC, Koi Sushi and Thai. 25, Lola Nashville LLC, Lola Nashville. 26, Gary Jing China Buffet. 27, 404 Management Group LLC, 404 Bar and Grill. 28, Z Bar LLC, Z Bar. 29, Marcellus Banks, Gandy Seafood Lennox. 30, Volunteer State Horseman Foundation, Volunteer State Horseman Foundation for the Iroquois Steeplechase. Those applications or the staff recommendation for those applications is for indefinite deferral. I'll entertain a motion to do so.
So moved, Will Conway.
Second, Joe Perlin.
I have a motion, I have a second for indefinite deferral. Are there any discussion on any of those? Hearing none, as I call your name, I'll entertain your vote on the motion to indefinitely defer. Ms. Jarman,
Yay.
Mr. Conway,
Yay.
Mr. Perlin,
Yay.
Ms. Spalding.
Yay.
4 yeas, no nays. Those applications are indefinitely deferred. Once again, it is the responsibility of the applicant to submit the necessary documents and request submittal or request to be put back on the agenda. Moving right along, next we've got a few trials this evening. One of which has been the previous citation was paid. We'll get to that momentarily. The first trial this evening is number 31 on the agenda, Bellshire Pizza. And I believe Ms. Colquitt has requested that the board turn on the video. Is that correct? Is there a reason you'll turn it?
Just if there's going to be extensive discussion, it would be helpful. It would probably be more helpful if there's going to be an attorney appearing, or if the witnesses are actually, if they could have their video on, that may be of assistance.
Okay. and we will try to accommodate if we can. Okay, so who is here on behalf of Belshire Pizza? Mr. McDonough, do you have a number for Dontre to unmute?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we have Veronica Bartley. She's here, and then sounds like the owner's here as well.
Larry Hamilton. Larry, the guy that was here working.
So we have everyone present for that one.
All right, great. Ms. Bartley, are you the attorney for Belshire Pizza?
No, sir. I'm just the manager.
Okay. We'll make sure I get my titles correct. So at this point, who will be, can I ask first, who will be speaking on behalf of Belshire Pizza?
Can I have Veronica Bartley, my manager, do it?
Sure. All right, and then before we proceed, let me ask Mr. Norris or Ms. Bartley, how do you plead in this case, guilty or not guilty?
It's guilty.
Ms. Bartley, did I understand you correct, saying you pled guilty?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, I would ask that anyone that is planning to speak or that could possibly speak on the behalf of either the permit holder or the complainant, in this case, Mr. Hardrick, Mr. Brown, or Mr. James, to be sworn in before we start the hearing.
Would you raise your right hands for me, please?
Oh, hold on just a minute. I think Mr. Hardrick is on here, but he's muted.
Do we expect him to speak on this case, Ben?
This is Don Trey with tech support. Does anyone know his number? I can unmute that number.
It's one of the 854s. It's at least caller number 6, maybe.
Mr. Hardrick, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
And now,
Hunter? Oh,
was that Mr. Hardrick?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right.
All right. Will you be speaking on behalf of the beer board?
Yes, sir.
All right. Very well. Ms. Colquitt, I'll turn it over to you for a moment.
Will all the participants please raise their right hands for me, please? Do you
Okay.
swear or affirm the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Very well. Thank you. So we're going to start off by hearing the complainant side. Mr. Hardrick, if that's you, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular incident happened on January the 25th at Belshire Pizza, where we were conducting a compliance buy using underage minors. We entered the minor entered the location, and the person at the bar did check the ID, but made the sale anyway. Once the sale was made, the underage minor prompted me to come in. At that point, we excused the minor, and I presented my beer board credentials and proceeded to write the report.
Okay, very well. Does that complete your comments?
Yes, sir.
Very well, thank you. Ms. Bartley, I believe you're speaking on behalf of Belshire Pizza.
Yes, sir. That did happen according to the video that I reviewed. Mr. Hamilton just could not locate his glasses and couldn't read the ID very well. And he has fully admitted to making the mistake We're really here just to ask for some leniency. I don't know if a dismissal is possible, but I am going to ask for a dismissal. And if not, we would appreciate a decreased fine due to, of course, COVID has, laid down some financial issues just like everyone else, and it's put a major strain on our business. And Mr. Hamilton has, admitted to the mistake and has corrected it, as the beer board has been out to visit us 3 more times since then, and all with passes. So, and then we've had our beer permit for 6 years. This is the first time that we have failed that. It's a mistake. It's been a valuable learning curve for him. He hasn't worked for us very long, but it has been a huge attribute to our business in many ways. So that's really why I requested a hearing, is to ask for some leniency by either a dismissal or a lower fine.
Okay, does that conclude your comments for the moment?
Yes, sir. And Mr. Hamilton is here as well. I don't know if he wants to say anything or if you want to ask him anything.
Like
You
a
have the
valuable
floor. He's welcome to if he wants to.
Okay.
It's just a valuable lesson that everybody learns a lesson in life, I guess, and it was just a valuable lesson that I learned. And if I should have had my glasses. I just didn't. I asked him for his ID when he walked, but he handed me wallet, and I just couldn't see it. I mean, I assumed he was old enough when he handed me his wallet with his ID in it.
All right, thank you. Generally, as I like to do, just to validate it, when someone states that something happened for the beer board, Mr. Hardrick, can you verify, or will you verify that beer board has since been to this location 3 times since the January 25th incident?
We have, and they have passed their rechecks.
Okay, very good. So at this time, I'll open it up to the board for any questions for Mr. Hardrick as a representative of the beer board, or Ms. Bartley, or Mr. Hamilton, or Mr. Norris.
I've got a question for Inspector Hardrick. This is Will Conway. When you spoke to the server, Mr. Hamilton, on the day of the incident, did he mention anything on that particular day about his glasses, or did he have glasses there?
He did, and he actually wrote in his statement, and I'll read it verbatim. I looked at the ID with no glasses on, in statement.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board?
I just know that it's a serious issue, and we do deeply apologize for it. We do take it very, seriously, and make sure that this won't happen again. That's just coming from Leonard Norris.
Very well. Thanks, Mr. Norris. To the board, are there any other questions of Mr. Hardrick or the permit holder?
Veronica? Any other questions?
Hearing no questions, the permit holder has pled guilty, so there's no need to sustain the citation. Let me ask for a motion for penalty from the board.
I'll move, this is Will Conway, for a $1,000 civil penalty or 7-day suspension, 30 days probation. The reason behind the reduction is the fact that Mr. Hamilton did admit, and apparently had at the time, his glasses. They've been visited 3 times after this, and they passed each time. And if I'm reading the recommendations correctly, this is the first offense to sale under a minor. They had the previous violation, but they did show up today. And I can appreciate the various problems that everybody's had during COVID, and based upon all of those, I would recommend that reduction from the staff recommendations.
I'll second it, Joe Perlin.
Well, thank you. I have a motion for a $1,000 civil penalty or the option to serve a 7-day suspension and 30-day probation. Any additional discussion on that motion? Hearing none, as I call your name, I'll entertain your vote on the motion for penalty. Ms. Jarman?
Yay.
Mr. Conway?
Yay.
Mr. Perlin?
Yay.
Ms. Spalding?
Yay.
4 yeas, no nays. Motion passes. Ms. Bartley, Mr. Norris, Mr. Hamilton, the board, after hearing your comments, as well as the beer board comments, has issued a fine in the amount of $1,000, or you have the option of serving a 7-day suspension followed by a 90-day probation. What that would entail is coordinating with the beer board, should you decide to serve the suspension, that they would work with you to ensure that you can't have access nor sell any beer products for a 7-day period. Or you have the option to pay the $1,000 civil penalty within the next 7 days to maintain your permit as it is and to continue selling. It's your prerogative completely. You can, sometime over the next few days, feel free to reach out to the staff and discuss which option you so choose. Again, that is your prerogative. We thank you for being here this evening, and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 32 on the agenda, Dollar Gen Corp. LLC, Dollar General Store number 11816.
Mr. Chair, caller number 4 is Sean O'Connell, the manager of Dollar General, if we can unmute him.
Hello. So I'm actually the district manager. I'm not the store manager.
Yes, so is that Mr. O'Connell?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, it's a little scratchy, but so I understand you're the district manager, not the store manager.
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you, are you the only one testifying this evening?
I believe so.
All right, very well. Thank you. My next question for you, Mr. O'Connell, is how do you plead on to this offense? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Very well. Who will be speaking on behalf of the beer board on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, that would be Inspector Hardrick.
All right. Thank you, Inspector. Inspector Hardrick, you are already sworn in this evening. Ms. Colquitt, if you would be so kind to swear in Mr. O'Connell.
Would you raise your right hand for me, please?
Mm-hmm.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Hardrick, we'll hear from you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular violation occurred on February 27th of this year, where we were conducting a compliance buy using underage minors. This was at the Dollar General, 415 Trinity Lane, at which time the clerk was Ms. Walker. We utilized 2 underage minors at this time. She did check the IDs on both minors, but did end up selling to both minors. Once the sale was concluded, she alerted me. I entered the store, identified myself as a beer board inspector, and the report was initiated at that point.
Does that conclude your comments?
Yes, sir.
Very well, thank you. Mr. O'Connell, I'll open the floor to any comments you may have.
Yeah, so I actually took over the district on February 27th. So I was made aware of the incident on February 28th, at which point we did our own internal investigation. We suspended Tianche Walker, and at which point, after the investigation, we did terminate her employment. And then on top of all that, we did have all existing employees and any new employees retake their company-based learning on tobacco and alcohol sales.
All right. Does that conclude your comments for the moment?
Yes.
All right. Very well. Thank you. Now I'll open up the floor to board. Are there any questions you have of Mr. Hardrick or Mr. O'Connell?
Hi, this is Bailey Spalding. I'm just interested in hearing more about what some of the corrective action plan is that the store is taking, given that this is, I think, the fourth offense of this nature. Thank you.
Yes, and I believe all 4 incidences actually happened with the same employee, correct? If I was reading the report correctly, I think that's what happened. So, like, again, I was brand new to the district, so I just found out about these incidences. The last one being on the February 27th. So I wasn't unaware of the first 3 that happened until I got, until we did our investigation. So since then, we have made all of our employees take the company-based learning on not selling to minors or illegal alcohol and tobacco sales, which include fake IDs or non-approved, government-approved identification. And I've had all the employees do that across my entire district so we could be compliant. And then as well, every time I'm in the building doing my quality store visits or check-ins, I am also questioning my employees on what are like indicators of fake IDs, and that we'll make sure we're checking all IDs and birthdays and are current on all our trainings.
Thank you. And I was wondering, has the beer board been back out to do any more of these compliance checks?
Mr. Hardrick?
I have revisited. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. We have revisited and rechecked this location, which they have passed.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? So I have a question for staff. Director, this way, pointed more toward you. Staff recommendation is a bit more extensive than normal. I understand, I believe I know the answer, but I'm not exactly sure how it got there. Can you explain why the recommended civil penalty is $5,000 in this case?
I'd be happy to explain that, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. This falls in line with the Quicksack case that we had a few weeks ago, wherein I believe it was their 4th sale as well. And we took action in that case. They had 2 underage buys that happened at the same time there. And basically the same thing happened in this case as well, where we had 2 underage informants that successfully purchased alcohol underage. And so just like we did in that case, we assessed $2,500 for each violation. And as we said before, we don't typically make that recommendation And I know the board doesn't typically follow that as well, but I believe the other option in this case would have been to suspend them for 30 days. And so we're taking more of an approach to try and be more proactive in assisting these permit holders to try and find out why they continue to sell to minors. And so that's why we also include the added training and the corrective action plan.
Thank you. Question, follow-up question to that. I'm not sure if you or any other staff members have been in contact with Dollar General, particularly Mr. O'Connell or any other district managers, to question them on their training practices and how thorough you guys may think that program is that they have, and then maybe how it could be best suited for staff to work in cooperation with the company and or the district managers such as Mr. O'Connell or others for typical or other C-store type outfits. But have you guys had any conversation with, in this case, Dollar General, Mr. O'Connell, or whomever about their program at all?
And we're certainly happy to communicate with them moving forward. I was not aware of any sort of formal program that they had in place. Ultimately, it's their choice as to what they include in their corrective action plan. Right. And if they believe that it's significant enough that it will correct the issue in this case, then we're happy to work with them on that as well.
Okay. Thanks for that. It was just a question that I had. So.
Yep. Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions from the board?
My only little concern is this is their fourth offense. Why didn't the district manager come in front of us the previous three? Just curious. Or somebody from the company.
Sure.
It took 4.
Well, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm just stating what Mr. O'Connell said earlier. His first day on the job was the date this happened. Mr. O'Connell, I'll turn it over to you so that you may answer Mr. Perlin's question directly.
Yeah. Again, I'm not really aware, and I don't want to speculate, but I want to say that GM before me was actually on a leave of absence. So maybe she was not able to get contacted for this. And I do know that the dates of these 4 incidences were about a month and a half apart. So I don't know, because the last incident was roughly about 2 months ago, that maybe all this kind of just happened in a short time frame, maybe.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions by the board? Hearing none, Mr. O'Connell has pled guilty on this matter, so there's no need to sustain the citation. At this point, I'll open it up to the board for a motion on penalty. Not all at once. Guys, I do need a motion.
I'll move to recommend the staff recommendations of the $5,000 civil penalty, 30-day suspension, 180-day probation, along with the corrective action plan, the beer board best practices, and more frequent appearances. There's just too many. Something should have happened sooner.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion to issue a citation in the amount of, or a civil penalty in the amount of $5,000, or the option to serve a 30-day suspension and 180-day probation. The corrective action plan, a copy of the corrective action plan submitted to the beer board, as well as beer board best practices training. I have a second. There's any discussion on that?
I just have a quick question. When is the corrective action plan due?
That is certainly something that we can take up with Mr. O'Connell and discuss that with him. If the board would be interested in providing a date, whether it's one of the meetings that you would like to review it yourself, or we can send you a copy of it once we receive it. However, the board would like to conduct it.
Okay, I always trust the staff is going to look through it. I just wanted to make sure that the general manager, the district manager, had what he needed in terms of getting things together.
My comments to the motion go back to my question earlier. The beer board best practices training, can that be, Benton, if the motion as stated passes, is that an opportunity, kind of going back to my question earlier, for you to work with Mr. O'Connell to better understand and or better discuss how their plan and how any training that the beer board staff can do could best be suited for them? Is that how you envision that? It's not two separate things, but as a cooperative effort?
Right. I think the purpose of us being involved is that we're trying to get to the bottom of exactly what the issue is in this case. So I think it's like you say, it's a collaborative effort with between us and the permit holder.
Okay, great. And Mr. Conway, I'm not trying to unwind your motion. I just want to make sure there's some intentional understanding or more clarity behind that. Is there something there that you disagree with that may be in the form of the way I asked the question, or maybe Mr. McDonough stated that? Any concerns there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, any other discussion?
Can I make a comment?
Mr. Connell, hold on. We're in the middle of the motion. I can't let you speak. I'll give you a moment in just a second. Any other discussion from a board member? Hearing none, as I call your name, I'll entertain your vote on the motion for penalty options. Ms. Jarman.
Yay.
Mr. Conway.
Yay.
Mr. Perlin.
Yay.
Ms. Spalding.
Yay.
Have 4 yeas, no nays, motion passes. Mr. O'Connell, the board issued a civil penalty of $5,000, or you have the option of serving a 30-day suspension and 180-day probation. That is your prerogative. If you choose to serve the suspension, you can communicate with the board staff as to how that will function, so that you don't have to physically remove the product from the store, or you have 7 days from today's order to pay the $5,000 civil penalty. Now I'll open it back up to you, as I believe you had a question on what we were just discussing.
So I'm a district manager for Dollar General, and I don't really handle the legal aspect of the training or the fine paying. Do you guys, because I got an email from my legal team to be on this meeting, because I was a district manager for the store. Do you guys send that to my corporate office to kind of let them handle, as I'm not, I guess, at liberty to pay it? It's not, and it's getting on to the corporate.
We can follow up with them and get the contact information for the legal entity that represents Dollar General.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, to Benton, again, it kind of goes back to my third time to mention this, is how, in this case, when you've got a hierarchy in a large company like Dollar General, how will you coordinate any planned training or collaborative efforts?
I think in this case, in the way that Mr. O'Connell explained it, we would communicate both with Mr. O'Connell and also with legal counsel in this case to find out, first of all, exactly how they conduct the training and exactly who has the authority to make that determination regarding the training, and also any sort of corrective action that they plan on taking outside of that.
All right, very good. Mr. O'Connell, is that okay? Is that okay by you?
Yeah.
Do you understand what Mr. McDonough was stating?
Yes, I do.
Okay, very well. Well, thank you for being here this evening.
We'll reach out to them tomorrow.
All right, great. Mr. O'Connell, thank you for being here this evening. Best of luck in your new role. Hopefully you're getting this under control. Again,
Yes, thank you.
All right. The next on the agenda, number 33 and number 34. It is the same permit holder, V-Bar LLC, Van Dyke Bed and Breakfast. I believe it's 33 and 34. Yes. Who will be speaking on behalf of the beer board?
We'll have Inspector James and Inspector Hardrick, and then we also have Curtis Harrington that will be representing the respondent in this case.
Okay, is Mr. Harrington unmuted?
He just was.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Harrington. And Mr. James, Inspector James, are you unmuted?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right, great. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to have Mr. James or Inspector James, Inspector Hardrick on behalf of the beer board. Mr. Harrington, is anyone on your side going to be speaking other than yourself?
Yes, Chairman, and ideally we'd have video capabilities. I'm sure that's a fumble of the ball on my end, no doubt, because here in my office around my table, I have Justin Prince, owner of Van Dyke, as well as Tinsley Dempsey, general manager and permitted server at Van Dyke. And we also have Sam Wetterow, an employee and permitted server at Van Dyke.
Okay. So you mentioned video capabilities. Is there a concern that there isn't video capabilities at this point, at this moment?
Yes, it doesn't seem to be connecting. Yeah, but that's
video from the standpoint of just so that we can see you. Is that your concern?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. We seem to be able to hear you okay.
Okay.
If I don't see any reason we could not proceed.
Okay. That sounds
so
good.
at this point, I'll ask Ms. Colquitt. Inspector Hardrick is already sworn in. Mr. Inspector James and Mr. Harrington, if your clients and anyone there that may speak on behalf of your client, we would ask them to be sworn in as well. At this moment, Ms. Colquitt, I'll ask you to take over.
Would you all raise your right hands for me, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do.
I do.
Very good. All right, thank you. So, Mr. Inspector James or Mr. Inspector Hardrick, which one will you be? Let's do this because there are two violations 2 alleged violations, one on January 29th, the second on January the 30th. If you could you discuss both of them in the same, we'll take both of them in conversation and discussion, and then at the board's pleasure, we can either take them together or we can take them separately at that point when we get to that point. So to the inspectors, who will be speaking on behalf of the beer board?
Mr. Chairman, this is Inspector James. I'm going to speak on the first day that the sale occurred, and the very next day, Inspector Hardrick was the one who did that report. So I can just give my brief overview, and then he can give his directly after. But
Okay.
on January.
Oh, I think we need to get a plea from the.
Oh, you're
respondent.
right. Sorry. I'm taking into consideration all the moving parts and forgot one.
Sorry.
Mr. Harrington, if I may ask you, how do your clients plead on number 33, which was the alleged offense on January 29th?
Guilty with explanation, Chairman.
Very well. And the alleged violation on January 30th?
Guilty with explanation, Chairman.
All right, very good. So thank you, Mr. McDonough. Thank you for calling me the carpet. All right, I'm sorry, Inspector James. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So this occurred on January 29th. We were conducting underage beer buy compliance check, just like we always do. We sent in the minor while me and the other inspector waited outside. So the minor went into the location. This is a hotel. So she went into the location, and there's a bar when you go into the lobby area. She sat at the bar, and she ordered a beer and was served the beer. The bartender did check her ID, but didn't calculate the date correctly. So she did serve the beer, and at that time, we were made aware. I went into the location and, relieved the minor and went ahead and processed the paperwork. And that concludes my comments.
Very well. Mr. Hardrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second incident occurred on January the 30th. And just for the clarification of the board, the reason why this location was visited back to back is because January the 30th is a Saturday, and it was the last Saturday of the month. And the way we conduct compliance buys is the last Saturday of the month, we go back and we do rechecks of every location that failed for that month. So we were not targeting this location, and I'll just make that statement for the clarification of the board. But the incident that occurred on January the 30th, we were using undercover minors to check the location for compliance. The minor did enter the location and purchase beer. At that point, we were alerted. I went in and the report was initiated. End of comment.
Very well. Thank you. Mr. Harrington, I'll turn the floor over to you for explanation. And again, you can take them one at a time, or you can take them together if you want to explain the situation, as I'm sure you will.
Thanks, Chairman. I think we'd like to take these individually. And for the reasons I'll describe, we're asking this evening that the board consider dismissing the citation issued on January 29th. Or if the board is not inclined to dismiss, to consider reducing the amount of the monetary penalty as it pertains to the citation issued on January 30th. We're requesting that the board consider reducing the amount of the fine levied. I'll start with the January 29th citation. The sale resulting in the citation involved Van Dyke General Manager Tinsley Dempsey. Ms. Dempsey has been with Van Dyke for nearly 3 years and has over 16 years serving in the hospitality industry, and she has no history of underage sale violation. As Ms. Dempsey will briefly testify, on January 29th, the date of the first citation, the establishment, which is a 8-room hotel, in 5 Points, East Nashville, which offers food and beverage service in a traditional bar restaurant setup, was closed. The operating hours for the restaurant and bar are 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Fridays, which are posted on the front glass of the business, and this was a Friday. At around 12 o'clock noon, Ms. Dempsey was working on site. She was there by herself as the only employee. She was preparing for opening that evening when there was an attempt to enter the front door by the informant. Ms. Dempsey opened the door to ask how she could help. The informant asked if she could enter the premises, and Ms. Dempsey informed that she was sorry, but that the business was closed. The informant said okay and simply walked away quickly. Ms. Dempsey sat back down to continue her work. A few minutes later, the informant attempted to open the door once more, and Ms. Dempsey got up and opened the door. The informant then stated that she was, quote, there to wait for her friend, quote, and insinuated that she was there to see a guest of the hotel. And she asked if she could come inside of the business. The hotel at that time was not at full occupancy. Again, it's a very small business, only 8 rooms. And Ms. Dempsey thought this was strange, seemed a bit odd, since the informant did not mention these facts prior on her first attempt to come inside. And she somewhat reluctantly let the informant inside. She then asked if she could get her a glass of water or an iced coffee while she waited for her friend. The informant then asked to see the beer list and ordered a beer through a QR code. Ms. Dempsey then checked the informant's ID, miscalculated the date, and served the beer. I do not frequently come before the board contesting citations for underage sale violations. This is not because I'm not asked to do so somewhat frequently by permittees that have been issued violations, but it's because I usually do not get involved if the request is from a business which has a reputation for serving minors or is without some special set of circumstances. As owner Justin Prince will testify, prior to these violations, Van Dyke has never been issued a citation from the Beer Board or the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission for sale to a minor. The business takes these matters seriously, and its small team follows protocols, holds valid server permits, and holds their business and reputation in the small East Nashville community very dear. I would also like to say to the board that I know the Beer Board inspectors well. I consider them to be friends and have the highest level of respect for each one of the Beer Board inspectors. I attend the Beer Board inspections for nearly all of my clients, and as a result, have the privilege of lots of interaction with the inspectors, Inspector Hardrick and Inspector James, namely. I say this to say that I know the inspectors do their jobs extremely well with the highest level of decency and respect for the permit holders and employees, and that they do not play games or try to trap permittees into committing underage sale violations. I'm here on behalf of Van Dyke contesting this citation due to a unique set of circumstances that I personally have never seen in my 12 or so years practicing for the board. Specifically, I've never before seen a business approach during its posted hours of closure by an informant, the informant being told that we're sorry, the business is closed, please come back during our hours of operation, we'll be happy to serve you. The informant leaving and then immediately reappearing with a fictional story in order to gain access to the business. Perhaps this is more common or routine than I'm aware, and I simply haven't been confronted with the scenario, but it struck me as a bit odd and justified bringing the matter before you today. I would now like to offer the board Ms. Dempsey to say a few short words.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
If I may, and I know we don't typically bring in additional testimony, but I would ask that Inspector Brown be unmuted on here, because first of all, I'd just like to comment that anytime a business is closed, that we we communicate that to each other and we make sure that we don't return until the business reopens and we, the scheduled time that it's supposed to reopen. So I believe Inspector Brown could shed additional light on that as well. I believe he's calling user number 17, I believe.
That's fine, Mr. McDonough, but I'm not going to interrupt Mr. Harrington's testimony for his client, so
Right.
I want to allow him to finish.
It's at the
until
appropriate
he's
time.
satisfied. All right, Mr. Harrington, please proceed.
Yes, so I'd now like to offer Ms. Tinsley Dempsey, General Manager of Van Dyke, who's already been sworn in. Ms. Dempsey, can you briefly describe the incident if you have anything to add to my statements? And is there anything you'd like to add in general?
Sure. Just as you stated, we were closed. I was there working alone, and I found the situation to be a little odd, and I was thrown off. I take my job very seriously, and I'm aware of the responsibility of serving alcohol. I just, made a mistake, and I'm very, very sorry for it. I'm sorry to Justin to have to sit through this.
The board may have some questions for you, Ms.
Yes.
Dempsey.
Mr. Harrington,
That's all I have, Chairman.
Okay. Now, Mr. McDonough, is Mr. Brown here? And if he's going to speak, we do need him to be sworn in.
Well, perhaps I misspoke, Chair. That's all I have for Ms. Dempsey. I next wanted to offer owner Justin Prince to say a few words.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Please go ahead.
That was my fault. I'm sorry. So Justin Prince, owner of Van Dyke. Justin, if you could slide over, I think they can probably hear you. Can you address, for the benefit of the board, your personal and business policy regarding the service and sale of alcohol?
Yes. Well, first of all, we take our responsibility very seriously. For serving alcohol to the community and are very intentional on preventing these kind of things from happening. It's embarrassing and for all of us, Tinsley, Sam, and myself, that these events occurred. They're my two most seasoned employees. They take their jobs very seriously. They're great employees, and we all as a team take this responsibility seriously. We always ID, always, and unfortunately these mistakes did happen, and we take full responsibility for them and are embarrassed by it. We are taking corrective actions to prevent this in the future.
Can you describe for the board those corrective actions that you're putting into place?
Sure. Yeah, we've number one, we've right after these events occurred, had multiple full team meetings about emphasizing the importance of checking IDs and any relevant facts on preventing this from happening again, because of the two incidents were a miscalculation of the dates on the ID. I got a ID calendar that is placed right by point of sale to make sure that it's very obvious what date is the earliest date that can a birth date that can be sold to for overage, and the we ID calendar. And then we are in communication with Inspector James about setting up a full staff training with the beer board.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Are you aware of the beer board coming in since the date of these violations for ID checks?
I'm aware of at least one other occasion where they've come in, and I believe Sam was there working that night and correctly identified the underage drinker or underage person, and decline service.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prince. Chairman and board, to close on this citation, though Ms. Dempsey did in fact make a math error which resulted in the citation, we would ask, considering the unique circumstances, history of Van Dyke, testimony you've heard here today, showing true remorse for these events, we would request that the board consider dismissing this citation, or in the alternative, a reduction of the monetary fine. Thank you.
Very well. So as obviously, depending on the circumstances, I think we're going to stay on this one for the moment. Are there any questions from the board for Inspector James or for Mr. Harrington or his clients? Mr. McDonough, you had mentioned Mr. Brown may have some comments. Are there some comments that you think he needs to make this evening on this matter? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I do, but I don't see him on here now on the call list. Okay. But I would be happy to unmute him if he's able to log back in. If you guys want to move to the next one.
It's discretion. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Harrington or his clients regarding number 33, or for that matter, any questions of Mr. James?
I believe he's back on now. My apologies.
Okay.
He's number 19.
Him to make some comments to points that were made previously.
Yes, he would be able to.
Okay. Mr. Brown, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can. Before you're going to speak on this matter, I'm going to need you to be sworn in, please. Ms. Colquitt.
Yes, sir.
Can you raise your right hand for me, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Melvin Brown, I do.
All right, Mr. Brown, per the request of the director, he mentioned you may have some comments as to process that takes place with regard to open or closed establishments.
Yes, if you'd like me to, I missed, my phone service is cut in and out. I missed part of the hearing, but I think I heard much of it. I think the only thing I would add is that I don't unless Inspector James has something to add. Inspector James comes in and processes the event. He gets identifies the person that sold, asks them to write a statement about what happened. I believe, and more than likely, what the servers testified to today is probably consistent with what was given on the statement. And I don't have any reason to doubt or dispute that. But I would only add, I suppose, that in consideration of a beer permit holder to consider that they've never been cited, would have to take also into consideration how long they've had a beer permit and how many times they've been tested. And in the past, we've looked back, and what we have found is that looking back over about 20 years, not in this case, but looking back over about 20 years, the beer board relied on the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to take the initiative and they followed along with them as a team. And it resulted in testing anywhere from probably 100 to 200 places a year out of 1,000 to 2,000, back in those days, as low as 1,000 on, off, and on off sale permit holders. So for actually going back into the 1960s, for 50 years, we tested a couple of hundred a year, and now we're testing between 100 and 200 a month. So we've increased the number in the last 2 years of testing. We're trying to test every single permit holder and then retest every one that fails, and then retest every failure again and again. So that's our methodology. And because all we're trying to do is achieve compliance, but we want to be fair and test at least 90% and also test any complaints received. Don't recall any complaints whatsoever on Van Dyke. And in that process, I am relatively certain that they've only been tested 3 times. They failed the first 2 and they passed the 3rd. And that's my recollection. So I would also say that the and Inspector James and Inspector Hardrick have the file. They know exactly which informant it was and their driver's license and this and that. And I would say that all the informants we use are using a valid Tennessee ID, or it might even be expired. In this case, it's not. But they're not using anything fake. They're using a valid ID that indicates they're under 21 with a red box around their picture. And in that red box, it clearly states they will not be 21 until a certain date. So all that's necessary is to say, is it that date yet? And if it's not, there's no math to be done. And I know that seems like an oversimplification, but it's that simple. Okay. So I don't doubt that they've never failed. I don't know how many times they've been tested by the ABC, maybe never, but I know that for us, we tested them 3 times. 2 of them were retests. They passed the 3rd one, the 3rd test with flying colors, if I recall, and that we just need to take into consideration how long they've had a permit, how many times they've been tested, before that is a consideration to dismiss the citation. And I'll be glad to answer any questions from council or from the board or from director.
All right. Any questions from the board for either Inspector James or Inspector Brown or Mr. Harrington? I think to my comments, and Mr. Brown, I appreciate your commentary to that. I remind the board that each decision we make should be based on the facts and the circumstances of each particular case. History does come into play, and we can only take facts and circumstances into consideration. In this case, if we don't have a history of that information, to me, that's not as relevant as it stated, perhaps. I'm just slightly disagreeing with Mr. Brown, but that's okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I don't know the process for this, but I just wanted to find out from Mr. Brown if I can ask him what our typical procedure is when we approach a location and the location is closed at the time, whether or not historically or on a regular basis, if we turn around and come right back and tried to, and I don't know if he was able to hear the testimony provided by the respondents regarding the fact that our informant was told that the business was closed and then turned around and came right back and then made up some story about whether or not she was visiting someone there at the location.
Yes, sir. I heard the testimony.
Okay.
And I'll in response, if it's okay to respond, in response, I would say that that's an unusual situation, and I can't attest to precedent because I don't recall any. But I do recall on other occasions what's happened is that, especially during the phasing recovery from COVID situation, there are many places that would normally be open, and their website may say they're open at this time, and they are not. And so they're on the list, and we try to act and schedule efficiently and effectively and go in some chronological geographical order, so we're not just driving back and forth. Just try to go in, not necessarily in a straight line, but in one direction. And so it's next on the list. You go there, and the door's locked, but it says it's open, or it looks like it's open. There's people inside, and so you knock on the door. That we've done that. They said we're closed. Probably in Germantown, I recall, and we went away because they're closed. Now, I didn't hear. I was standing nearby. I didn't hear the conversation between the cooperating witness and the manager, but I have no doubt that what the manager says is accurate, because it would not be if it was, for instance, I can't speak to the exact facts of this because I didn't hear exactly what was said, but it would not be unusual for us to say, well, it looks like you're open. See if it lets you in and serve you. And then the cooperating witness go and say, hey, can I come in and wait? And I'm going to say this, and it's okay, because we won't. It's very common, and I don't mind saying in an open hearing because we want to be completely transparent. It is very common, and it also answers your question a little related to the close or not. We in the story, it's very common for us with a single cooperating witness in a on sale premises to go in and ask for 2 menus and ask to be seated for 2, and to say, I'm waiting for my whoever, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my wife, my other party member. And then then they don't say, and can I have a beer? Because we don't want to scare everybody to death, and we don't want to just make them think they got to serve them. So they just wait till they say, can I get you something to drink while you wait, or while you're waiting to order? And the cooperating witness is instructed and says, yes, I'll get a beer. And if it's some kind of fancy beers or special beers, I may ask to see the beer menu. If it's a place where they know they can get a domestic beer, if they know by name, they just say that. They get their ID checked, or they don't ask for it, or they check it and they don't check it correctly, and they serve them, or they do check it correctly and they don't. That is our common operating manner. Also, that is not to deceive anyone. That mimics what happens in every restaurant every day. An incomplete party arrives waiting for the rest of the party. And we do it for a specific reason, so we're not ordering food and causing someone to start preparing food that we're not probably going to pay for. So you try to minimize the hardship to everybody involved. So that, in answer, I know that's a 1,000 answers to a 1-point question. That's 1,000 points, and I apologize But it is common for us to have that story that, yeah, I'm just waiting on somebody. That's not uncommon. That is exactly what we do. But that's, it's not going to disrupt what we're doing to say that in an open hearing, because it happens all day, everywhere, all over town. Not with cooperating witnesses, but with actual customers that are legal age, and some that are not. Okay. So if that answers the question, I know it doesn't completely answer it, because I can't tell you that this has happened before. We did exactly the same thing. I can only say that we do send one in to say, I'm waiting on somebody. And that was what was said.
All right. Let me ask you a question. Inspector James, does what Miss Dempsey said match with what happened?
Yes, Inspector James. I don't know what was said between the informant and the server. All I can tell you is when I went in, the server did tell me that she said that they were closed, but that she was told that the informant said that she was waiting for someone who was a guest. And so she said she went ahead and served her. So what I would say to that is, if you were closed, then why did you let someone sit at the bar and you served them a beer and you checked the ID, you just didn't check it good? So to me, it's the same thing that happens everywhere else that sells. So if you weren't open, then you shouldn't have been serving beer. And that concludes my comments.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Harrington, to you've heard the comments from both inspectors. Do you have any questions of them?
Just a couple of brief comments, if I may, Chairman. Right out of the gate, we obviously have admitted guilty and admitted to the miscalculation and the service of the beer. And again, to restate it, and I appreciate everything that Inspector Brown has said. And I certainly would not disagree that an eyebrow would not be raised if this situation was as simple as the informant coming in during hours of operation and saying, I'm waiting on a friend, can I have 2 menus, so on and so forth. But here, again, what justified us, in my mind, coming before the board was the legal consideration of access to the business and how that was gained, based on the testimony of Ms. Dempsey that is not disputed. And another fact that makes this situation a bit different from Inspector Brown's example that he gave is that the hours of Van Dyke on a Friday are posted. They're printed on the front glass. They're on their website. And so there's a distinction, I think, between what actually happened in the illustrative example that Inspector Brown gave, where you show up and perhaps a business says it's closed, but it's open, or vice versa. Here, there could be no confusion if one didn't even attempt to enter the building, that the business was closed. There was one individual inside, and that was general manager. And then right out of the gate, the informant is told, we're closed, I'm sorry. Come back during our operating hours. She leaves. And then when she comes back the second time with the story and gains access, again, I draw another distinction between the second example Inspector Brown gave, where someone says, "How can I help you? What can I get you?" An open-ended question. Ms. Dempsey did not do that. She said, "While you wait for the guest or your friend, can I offer you a water or a cold brew?" Were her exact words. And so that's another distinction that makes this circumstance a bit different, we feel, and justified us spending the board's time this evening to raise it. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you. Any questions from the board for either inspector or Mr. Harrington? Hearing none. Again, the permit holder has pled guilty to the act, to the violation. I would floor for a motion on penalty. I'm still open to it. I need a motion on penalty, folks.
Chairman, are you asking for a motion together, or are we doing this separately?
Well, in this case, the way we've proceeded thus far, and at the request of council, permit holders council, we're going to have this one stand alone on its own.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. 1,500 civil penalty or 7 days suspension and 30 days probation.
All right.
Second.
I have a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, as I call your name, I'll entertain your vote on the motion for penalty. Ms. Jarman,
Yay.
Mr. Conway,
Yay.
Mr. Perlin,
Yay.
Ms. Spalding.
She had to leave.
Including myself, we still have a quorum at this point. Break a tie. We have 3 yeas, no nays. Motion passes. Mr. Harrington, regarding number 33 on the agenda this evening, the board has issued a civil penalty of $1,500, or you have the option of serving a 7-day suspension and 30-day probation. So on to number 34. Same permit holder. It's my understanding, Mr. Hardrick, are you speaking on behalf of the board?
Yes, sir.
And earlier from the previous trial, Mr. Harrington, it's Justin Prince, Sam Wetterall are the 2 individuals subpoenaed in this matter. Are they still with you?
Yes, Chairman.
All right. So everyone who is going to be speaking has already been sworn in, so there's no need to do that. Earlier, as requested, the permit holder has pled guilty through their counsel with explanation. First, I'll open it to Mr. Hardrick to give us the details of the offense this evening, the alleged offense this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I stated before, this incident occurred on January the 30th, where we were conducting a compliance by using an underage minor. The minor did enter the location and was able to purchase beer. And just to reiterate for the clarification on the board, the reason why this particular incident occurred the next day is because that was the last Saturday of the month. So everybody that failed the compliance by in January was retested on January 30th. The minor was able to purchase beer. At that point, I entered the location, presented my beer board credentials to the server, Mr. Sam Wateroo, and the incident report was then initiated. End of comment.
Very well. Mr. Harrington.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Mr. Wateroo has been with Van Dyke for a little over a year and has 10 years serving in the hospitality industry. He has no history of underage sale violations. As he will briefly testify, the sale occurred at approximately 8 p.m. on Saturday. A male and female couple came into the business and were seated. Mr. Wetterow was their server. The couple stated they were looking at the menu, asked for 2 beers. Mr. Wetterow first ID checked the female, saw that she was underage and refused service. He then checked the male's ID and made a simple visual error. The ID, as he believes now, read February 28th, 2021. He read it as 1/28/21, which would mean the male had just celebrated a birthday. He wished the informant a happy birthday. They corresponded. Then he walked away and did serve the beer. And I'd like to offer for the board Mr. Wetterow to say a few brief words. Is there anything you'd like to add or say to the beer board this evening, Mr. Wetterow?
Yes, just that I made a very bad mistake. It was very embarrassing. With 10 years bartending, always being very severe when I ID, always very purchasing upon it, and I'm very sorry to Justin, and I'm very sorry to the board that this occurred, and I'm taking upon myself to just be better and be more careful and just never let something like this ever happen again.
Okay. They may have some questions for you, Mr. Wetterow.
Mr. Harrington, does that conclude your comments for the moment?
Yeah, just in closing, board members, summarize, he did in fact inadvertently serve a minor. Believe on all the testimony offered to the board today shows that Van Dyke, its owner Justin Prince, General Manager Ms. Dempsey, and Mr. Wetterow do their best to run a highly functional business. They take their responsibilities in serving alcoholic beverages very seriously. And we'd like to request at this time the board consider some leniency as they make their decision regarding the citation.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Harrington. To the board, are there any questions for Inspector Hardrick or Mr. Harrington or his clients? Any questions for the people who spoke? Hearing none, permit holder has pled guilty to the violation. Therefore, there is no need to sustain the citation. At this point, I will open up the floor for a motion on penalty.
So this is Will Conway, and I'm going to move for a $1,500 civil penalty, 7-day suspension, and 30 days probation. And here's the reason why I'm going to deviate from the staff recommendations. It looks like, obviously, we've heard the testimony. The first offense and the second offense happened in back-to-back days. I kind of relate it to a DUI first. You're hoping that the 48 hours in jail that the person that's convicted of a DUI serves will prevent them from ever picking up another DUI, which carries a 45 days in jail. They haven't had the smack in the face or the carrot and the stick. They haven't had the stick. This would penalize them the same for a first offense on the next day. And that's why that, along with everything else that we've heard from all of the testimony and, the prior compliance up until these two events, is why I would deviate from the staff recommendation.
All right, so Mr. Conway, thank you. Your motion is $1,500, 7-day suspension or 30-day probation.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's $1,500, 7 and 30.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Joe Perlin.
Very well, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, as I call your name, I'll entertain your vote on the motion for penalty. Ms. Jarman,
Yay.
Mr. Conway,
Yay.
Mr. Perlin,
Yay.
including myself, we still have a quorum. We have 3 yay votes, no nay votes. Therefore, the motion passes. Mr. Harrington, the board has exercised some relief in this matter from the staff recommendation. In this case, the board issued a fine for this violation in the manner of $1,500, or you have the option of serving a 7-day suspension followed by a 30-day probation. Understanding this is not intended as an advisory comment, but there are 2 fines or 2 citations issued to your clients this evening, totaling $3,000. Both carry a 7-day suspension. I may choose to speak with the staff regarding the options there and how that falls out and how those should be served either separately, concurrently, or just simply paid. I'll leave that up to you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Very well. Number 30, Mr. Harrington, thank you and your clients for being here this evening. We appreciate your efforts to run a positive establishment. Thank you very much.
Members.
Thank you.
Number 35 on the agenda, R&R Drive-In Market, Inc., R&R Drive-In Market. As a matter of record, prior to the meeting today, it looks like it was paid yesterday. We had issued a citation in the form of $2,500. It does look like the civil penalty was paid yesterday. Therefore, that is why it is still on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept payment to satisfy the penalty for number 35.
So moved, Will Conway.
Thanks, Mr. Conway. I need a second.
Joe Perlin, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? As I call your name, I'll entertain your motion to accept payment on the penalty. Ms. Jarman,
Yay.
Mr. Perlin,
Yay.
Mr. Conway.
Yay.
3 yays, no nays. Motion passes. Last on the agenda are administrative matters, executive director's report. Mr. McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, you'll see the report that I provided to you. From the previous meeting that I will start providing more in-depth reports to the board during the day meetings, since they're typically shorter, and just a brief overview of the revenue and finances during the night meetings. If you look at our report, we have taken in, as of yesterday, $682,973.07. And we're about 96% of our projections for applications, 98% for privilege taxes, and we've already met our projections for civil penalties earlier this year as well. And I can tell you that we actually met our projections for applications today. So we brought in a significant number of applications that came in today as well on top of that. And below that, the year-to-year comparisons through April 30th of last year, we're $124,926 ahead of that. April 30th of 2019, we're 2019, we're $297,822 ahead of that. And the year before that, we are sitting $217,036 ahead of that. So this, we are already in record territory for our revenue for this this fiscal year. And I can tell you that we've received 43 applications for delivery and curbside permits, and that comes out to just under $11,000 that we likely would not have collected this year if we did not have the delivery and curbside permits in place that the board passed. So that's definitely helping us in that area as well. So that concludes my report, and I will answer any questions that the board may have.
A quick question for you, Director. Thank you for the
Yes, sir.
report. First and foremost, secondly, my question is, what impact, if any, will the most recent passage at the legislature affect for our delivery curbside permit or the process or anything in your world, as I believe the new law allows for to-go drinks to remain in place up through, I believe it's June maybe of 2023. I could be off on the month, but I believe it's sometime in 2023.
That is correct, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that, Mr. Chair. If you're not aware, House Bill 241 and also Senate Bill 0681 allows for to-go of alcoholic beverages. And as the chairman just asked, that actually will have little impact on the services that we provide with our delivery and curbside permits. First of all, the state legislation just allows for curbside to go for alcoholic beverages, and it does not allow for delivery. And so, and also there is language in the bill that we worked on with the sponsors and also through our lobbyists to make sure that I felt like we were protected based upon the language that seems to require the approval of the local beer board prior to the location providing curbside for beer. And it does go into effect once the governor signs it, and it will expire on July 1st of 2023.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Any questions from the board to the director? Any comments from the board?
Just a quick question. Where are we at as far as the meetings virtually versus going back to in person? Because there's that executive order came out just the other day.
Right.
Good question.
And I believe, and I'll have to work with the legal counsel on that, but I believe that the new executive order will not allow for us to meet electronically or virtually. So I'll speak with legal counsel about that, but this may be our last virtual meeting moving forward. But I'll make sure to communicate that with the board members.
And this is Matthew Garth, legal counsel. The governor's executive order 78, which currently allows the remote meetings, actually expires at 11:59 this evening, and so it hasn't been renewed. And so, yeah, this likely will be the last remote meeting.
All right. Very good. Then, in theory, we will see everyone in person for the first time in a year at our beer board meeting, at our next beer board meeting. Any additional questions or comments from anyone on the board or at staff? If not, I will first say, Mr. Garth, thank you for helping us along over the last year through these, I would say, somewhat challenging and, if I can use the term clunky at first, until we all adjusted to how this will function in this medium and in this process. To the board, thank you to all of you who kind of hung in through this. Again, it's been a challenging and it's been clunky. It's not anything like meeting in person, yet we have made it through. We've been doing this again for a year now. So I, as chair, really want to thank you guys, and to the director and to the staff. Thank you guys. This is not that, it's not that it's any easier on you guys to do this like this as well. We appreciate you guys hanging tough, hanging with us, and supplying us information as we need it to help make our role better. So we certainly thank you.
Thank you.
With that, folks, we stand adjourned. Thanks so much. Have a good evening. See you
All right.
soon.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Thank you.